Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at A Stedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 180, and we are coming to you off schedule, I suppose, a little bit early. We're recording this on Thursday, May 16th in the evening here in the United States. I've got Scott alongside. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's going on, my friend?
Chilling. Good day of work. Sorry to the listeners. I am the only panelist, so you're going to hear a lot of me tonight. Please stick with us. Don't drop off now. But I am no. All jokes aside, happy to be able to chat on a night that we weren't planning on recording because there's sure a heck of a lot to talk about right now.
There is. It's those circumstances and other extenuating circumstances. I have to be out of town this weekend, so just for the listeners' own edification, yeah, we're gonna give you this pod, and then we're not gonna be with you on Sunday in our normal time slot after the match. We're gonna give it a few days, kind of let the season end, collect our thoughts. We'll be back with you midweek next week. But I wanted to jump in because, as you say, there's a lot to discuss. Obviously the Manchester City match a few days ago, and kind of all of the fallout from it. And we're going to get into all of the fallout from it, but we want to talk about the game itself first, because I think there's actually a lot to talk about from the game itself as well. We will also touch later on the women. They played Chelsea yesterday, a 1-0 defeat, and they have their final match coming up this weekend as well. So just a ton going on. I mean, the academy team, lost to Fulham earlier today. Like, there's just so much Spurs news going on, and obviously a lot of it is centered around Ange Postecoglou's press conference following the Manchester City match, and we're going to talk about that. But before we even get into that, let's kind of go over how this game played out, because um, this was interesting to say the least. It was a different lineup, it was a different setup, and it was, I think, much I'm going to be really, really effusive in my praise for a 2-0 defeat here, but I think the listeners will understand why. It was a really, really, I thought, well played match by Spurs despite losing it 2-0, right, Scott?
100%, 1000%. Um, it was the best we've looked in a couple of months. I think some of that bleeds into some of the uproar behind the press conference, and again we'll get to that, but we looked really good. I think shrewd decision to start Van de Ven out on the left. I think that was a good move. I think Radu not only deserved an opportunity but took that opportunity well. I thought he was good on the ball. His positioning was solid. I think my biggest gripe on him thus far was that he wasn't moving the ball to the left side effectively. And I'd said in our group chat at some point, I think that probably just needs to be worked out. Being he's a right-sided center back, and he played for a team that probably expected him to get the ball to the right most of the time in Genoa. So yeah, I was really glad to see that he worked that out. He looked good. But for me, it was all about the midfield. I think the interesting thing about the midfield in this match, Pierre played well. He had a couple. He had a couple. Missed kicks in our box that could have been costly and weren't. But overall, Pierre played well, and that allowed the three in front of him in Bentancur, Sarr, and Madison to rotate. It was really almost a diamond, with whoever was at the tip of the diamond acting as some sort of false nine, with Johnson and Son wide and high. Right, it was a very interesting setup, but it allowed, again, Pierre playing so well and being so disciplined allowed those three to rotate really well. They stayed in a triangle. They all took turns dropping into that space in between the center backs and playing as a false nine, and it allowed us to just distribute the ball wide effectively and get those wingers into good spaces. So tactically, we looked very good. First time we'd seen anything like that, and again, I think that bleeds into some of the uproar, right? But overall, a well played match from Spurs.
It's almost like the plan B that this team didn't have in matches against Chelsea or Arsenal or Liverpool over the last handful of weeks that we would have wanted to see, knowing that this team is very much down injury wise with no Adogi, and all the other injuries and things that this team has gone through. I think the other thing that this midfield and pseudo false nine weird setup. I mean, it was like that was the other thing. When we saw the lineup, we were thinking, well, is Madison playing wide on the left and Sun through the middle, or is he playing as a false nine? And then we kind of quickly figured out, okay, it's a false nine, but it was also almost like at times it was dueling tens with Sarr and Madison, and you wouldn't expect to see Sarr that far up the pitch, but he was able to get up that far up the pitch. And I think the thing that this did was it not only allowed the fullbacks to not play the inverted role because the midfield was already so clogged with those two midfielders getting into the spots where we would normally see Poro and in previous iterations Udogie. But what all of this allowed too was for the press to really work its magic. And it really, it didn't force Van de Ven to play like Udogie. It forced him to play almost like a more traditional left back, which I think he's suited for in a minimal role. I mean, I will say like 30-40 minutes in, he looked gassed. Like all that running, and for as much running as he does, he did look gassed. And I think this was a cool thing to see with him playing left back in this moment against City. But I don't think this is something I want to see long term. But it did allow the other players the freedom to execute in a press. And I thought, gosh, in the first half, Scott, I thought Spurs not only played toe to toe with Manchester City, I kind of thought they outplayed them in some respects. And if you look at some of the underlying statistics from this match, Spurs lose the XG battle overall, but when you talk about non-penalty XG, they actually win that battle at 1.66 to 1.61. And they were right there with them in open play. It was really ironically enough, it was set play that Spurs had a little bit of advantage of to give them that boost when we're talking about XG. But they outpossessed City, which is not something you would even expect. Not that, possession is the end all be all. You want goals. That's how you win matches, obviously. But you look at some of these underlying statistics and you think, man, Spurs might have actually been a little bit hard done by the scoreline.
Yeah, I agree. My only, I don't want to call it a pushback, but my only thought there is the goal that they scored, that when De Bruyne scored the ball to Haaland, that was because of a fast break, and so in the buildup, right? Not the goal itself, but I think being that we outpossessed City, I do think Pep came in with a game plan to let us have a little bit more of the ball, knowing that we're so easy to break against. I mean, every team up the table from 20 to 1 has broken on us this year pretty effectively, right? So I think some of why we outpossessed them was because of City's game plan. I don't necessarily expect that they're going to come and show us that much respect, but they probably saw an opportunity, and it did get them a goal, right? So it was as always a well managed game by Pep, but at the same time we had our chances, and like you said, we went toe to toe with City. Sonny, if Sonny finishes that chance and it's 1-1 late, who knows, right? There was other opportunities much earlier in the game that don't even stand out because of that Sun miss being so poignant, right? But ultimately, like you said, Spurs went toe to toe with City and could have won the match, and plenty to be happy with.
I want to come on to some of the individual performances. Let's start with Sonny, because that miss for me. And listen, I've heard all the conspiracy theories about this match, and we're going to get into it when we talk about Ange. We only kind of briefly touched on it during Sunday's pod about just the awkwardness of this matchup, but I've heard the conspiracy theories about how Sonny missed that breakaway chance on purpose to secure defeat and not hand Arsenal a better chance at winning the Premier League title. That's insane. First of all, Sonny definitely did not throw that chance away on purpose, which in some kind of way speaks to what I'm about to say. Is I'm still a little bit, I'm very unsure of how to feel about Heung-min Son right now. Like, his performances in the second half of the season have left so much to be desired, and this one I think is part of that as well. And I'm not just talking about the chance, because you would expect him in any scenario to finish that chance, even though it came against a backup goalkeeper who is not really backup goalkeeper quality. Like, he's a very good goalkeeper, Ortega is. But you would expect him to finish that. And when it comes to Sonny, I don't know. I'm very eager for the off season and kind of him to be able to reset, because I think that's what he needs at this point. He's just had a long season. It's his first season in this captaincy role. I don't even want to harp on it too much. I feel like I already have, but take me away on
No,
Sonny. What is your thoughts on him?
I say let's talk about Sonny, and it's an uncomfortable thing. I mean, he's beloved at this club and always will be. But for years and years, dating back to long before this podcast, we have talked about the fact that Son steps up and has big games against the top six, and against the rest of the league, he struggles. And there is a very distinct reason for that. The top six gets forward and they play attacking football, and the rest of the league sits back. And when Sonny doesn't have room to operate behind the back line, he has a really hard time. He's incredibly effective on the fast break. Look at his tallies, goal wise, especially under Conte and Mourinho. The dude scored goals, just bagged them for fun, and that was because we were set up to counter. So in this system, there's going to be very few chances to counterattack. We are going to have all of the ball. There's going to be literally inches between the back line and the touch line. And Sonny has never been able to operate in that fashion ever since he came to Spurs. It's not an age problem. It's simply something he's never done well. And so I worry, but then I also look at the fact that he scored, 80% of his goals in the first half of the season. It was on fire, so it can be done, right? A lot of that was through the middle. But when you look at the second half of the season, like you said, there's a lot that remains to be desired. I also look at the AFCON. That certainly plays into this, right? Disrupting your season halfway through it. You almost come back for a brand new season after being away for 5 weeks. So I do think with Heung-min Son, we have to give him through next season, right? To see what he can do with a full uninterrupted season. But at the same time, I wouldn't fault anybody for asking the question, do we maybe consider moving Sonny on because he's not perfect for the system and he still holds value, where in 12 to 18 months at age 33 or whatever it is, I don't know if he does, right? So it's an uncomfortable conversation, like I said, and you and I have talked about this, Andrew. I personally feel that Tottenham is unique in the sense that we really, really hold on to our fans and our favorite players and latch on to them, and have a really hard time as fans being okay with moving them on. The rest of the big clubs in England don't do that. They operate very shrewdly. I don't care how talented you are. If you can fetch me a price, or if you're not required anymore, we move you on, right? Look at Raheem Sterling at City. I mean, the dude was at the top of his game and a world-class winger when Pep moved him on, and everyone was wondering what he was doing. But City's gone and won the last 3 titles since they've done that, right? So it's something, again, that's hard for Spurs to even think about. But I think it needs to be considered.
I'll save you from a mea culpa. Sonny did not play in AFCON. He played in the Asian Cup, but
Oh my
that's
God!
a
Sorry,
simple slip up. But no, I don't disagree. I don't think Spurs are ready to move on from Sonny in any respect. He's their captain, but and I also think that he's the type of player that can adapt. It's one of those things that needs time. And when you consider, yeah, he had a preseason, but he also I'm leaning on the fact that there was some extra weight on his shoulders taking over the captaincy of this club. And not only that, but with traveling and representing his country in the middle of the season, it's very disruptive. And let's not forget, he still has scored, 17 goals on the season, I think, in the league. So it's not like, and he's leading the team in goals. And it's not like he's had a bad season. It's looked a hair off. And I'm interested to see what he looks like going into next year. I'm ready for that.
Yeah, all well said. And I think it's also worth adding, he's the captain of Korea, is a football mad country. He puts a lot of pressure on himself as the captain of Korea, probably more pressure than he does as the captain of Spurs, if I'm honest. They were expected to win that tournament, and they came up short against a not so great team in Jordan, right? So I think Sonny probably, is having a tough time mentally and emotionally for a period of the second half of the season. I hope it's still not an ongoing thing, but without a doubt, for the weeks, following or even a month following that tournament. He's got a lot on his mind, and that's a low, low, low as the captain of your country to bounce back from. And I think because it wasn't Spurs, it's kind of easy to overlook that too.
A few other notes that I had on individual players that I want to run by you. I'll move into the midfield. I thought Papsar was extremely lucky to get away with the foul that he placed on Kevin De Bruyne. It was a red card for me, and I thought he was really, really fortunate to get away with it. I know like Spurs fans won't like hearing me say that. I don't care. Go back and watch it. It was a nasty tackle. And he was a lucky boy after that. Bentancur is a weird one for me because I think Bentancur had a good match, but his reaction to being taken off, I think it can be read in multiple ways. I think he was taken off because of his own doing. He picked up that yellow card that was just a foolish tackle, a late challenge. I believe was it on Rodri? I can't even remember now, but we're talking about a few days ago. But it was a foolish yellow to take, and then he took another foul right before he was taken off after 55 minutes, and it was kind of taken off just because he was on his last chance there. He was gonna get a second yellow for his next foul, and to come off and just completely take his boot into the chair multiple times. Like, I felt kind of bad for the guys sitting on the bench because they were like feeling the wrath of that. But Bentancur I thought played well, but like he was taken off because of his own doing, and the reaction was a little it was strange to me, but I don't know. And then with Højbjerg, you mentioned earlier, Højbjerg is gonna have the slight lapses, but I also thought Højbjerg he gave the team something in this game that they really needed, and it was a release valve. There were a few diagonal balls that he hit in this match. There were at least 2, maybe 3 that led to directly to scoring chances. And Spurs have not had that element from not only from the center backs or the midfield of late, but from anyone to play a long ball to start something. It's all been the tic-tac triangles trying to work something and play out the back. But he was just like, fuck it. I'm going to send it. I see something. Let's go. And I was encouraged by that. Not that I think it's a long term. It was just nice to see. And I've been effusive in my praise for the way that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg has handled himself this season. And I think he's another really interesting case for the summer. I don't know. I don't expect him to be sticking around into next season, but it also wouldn't totally baffle me either.
Yeah, he is an interesting one. First of all, he was phenomenal. He's a big game player, and I think he has the mentality required for that big of a match. And who knows if he would have started had Basuma been fit. But Pierre is a good mind to have on the field in that big of a match, in my opinion. So kudos to him. With Bentancur, and I think it really kind of bleeds into some of what we want to talk about. Again, I keep saying that, but I think Bentancur was very frustrated because of how important it is for players to qualify for Champions League. I think he was upset with himself for putting himself in a position to be taken off because of his foul play, right? I also think he was upset with himself for missing the chance early in the match. I think he was upset that he had played so well and again put himself in a position to be taken off. But I also think he was just pissed that he had to come off, right? And I'm perfectly fine with that attitude during a game that carries so much weight. Because again, what we want to talk about is one thing, but when you're a player and you're playing at the highest level, losing is not an option. Like people don't get that far in sports for any reason other than they despise losing and like do not accept it, right? It's a real thing. And Bentancur was just pissed, he's a tough player. So I feel for him. I like that type of reaction. It told me everything I needed to know with Champions League on the line, because those guys wanted a result. They want to go to the Bernabeu. They do not want to go to, Slovakia and play a football match when they could be down in Spain. So
I was wondering which Eastern European country you were going to pull out.
I was trying to pull one out of my brain as fast as I could, man. But no, I just, he was pissed, and I'm okay with that reaction personally.
Well, I will say the Europa League final next year is in Bilbao, so That's
Okay, so let's go to
something to look
Spain.
forward to. Let's it's still work to be done in that respect, and we'll talk about that. But the last couple of notes I had were just moving further back to the defense. Again, we talked about Van de Ven. I thought Van de Ven, look, when you're going up against Kyle Walker, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle at times for sure. But I thought he looked pretty good in the role. It's not something I want to see all the time, but looked pretty good. And you brought up, you pretty much said everything I wanted to say about Dragic. I thought this was his third start, definitely his best. The passing looked better. Obviously, the couple of great defensive moments he had were really important and good. Romero, I wanted to mention Romero. Romero was really good in this match as well, I thought. And I also thought, weirdly enough, I thought he was unlucky to get booked with the collision with Ederson. Obviously, I understand why he had to be booked for it. It was but God, that was so scary. Like, I feel for Ederson, and apparently he's going to miss their final match as well.
Yep.
Hopefully he gets better. It's a really scary situation when you saw that collision. I thought that, and I said this on social media earlier in the week, Graham Lusso was doing the broadcast over here in the States for USA/NBC and did a really good job of explaining that, Romero has every right to that ball, and it's an unfortunate coming together. And it was just a really good job, really well spelled out by him. But I thought, Romero, of all the times that he picks up yellow cards, this was one that I guess was deserved, but it was a little unlucky.
I agree. I know I love the heart and the effort to go for that ball. Just as much as Ederson puts his body on the line, Romero does as well. And luck keeps Romero from an injury, in my opinion. Right? It was a brave challenge on both of their parts. I think Romero is always going to show heart and passion like that, so I'm not terribly surprised. But yeah, I appreciated seeing that. And while we're talking about Ederson, I think it's a moment to pause and give some praise to the opponent and Stefan Ortega, because their entire season's on the line in that moment. If they draw, they don't win the title, right? They're behind in goal differential. So to come in off the bench and make that save, oh my God. Just I can't say enough about it. And when your backup keeper is that good, you're Manchester City, right? So not surprising, but Stefan Ortega needs to have some credit thrown at him for a save. And I can even say that to say credit to Heung-min Son, because it was a good take too. I mean, I think he put the ball right where you'd want any striker to put the ball in that moment, right? Low and between the legs, and he made a good save. So credit to him.
Ortega made 3 saves and stopped 1.14 XG worth of goals in his time on the pitch, which was only about 20 or 30 minutes. So yeah, he definitely stepped up, and yeah, credit your opponent. I also, my last note on kind of individual players is actually about the other goalkeeper. I wouldn't say critical of Guglielmo Vicario this season, but I've been a little bit more tepid in my praise than some others. I thought he was outstanding in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, made some incredible stops, distributed well, all of it. And I just wanted to get that on the record, because I will definitely praise the man when he has a great game. And I thought this was a great game. So I just wanted to get that on the record as well. Back to Ederson too. Look, we're going to talk about the fans here in a second. I thought it was really, really unbecoming that the fans were booing Ederson after he was up from the injury, and that brief period of time where he stayed on the pitch. When he was on the ball, fans were booing him. That was kind of fucked. Didn't love that from the fans. Really bad. At the same time, the fans hung around after the game and applauded and were really appreciative of the effort. So I'll turn it around and say, good job there, but bad job earlier. When you don't boo the man because he was down. I mean, he was out. He was out cold. It was a really scary situation.
He has a broken orbital bone now. He was severely injured.
He was severely injured, and for some reason was allowed to stay on the pitch it was only about 5 or 10 minutes, but it should not have been. And
I don't know if you heard Pep, but in the press, after match press, Pep came out and said we took him off because he had no vision in his eye, and he had
a broken orbital bone will do that.
Yeah, exactly. And he was perfectly content to play with vision in one eye because he's an absolute baller and a madman, but he was very injured.
The last kind of thing to talk about from the game before we move on to what happened after the game is Mikey Moore getting his debut, becomes the youngest Spurs player to premiere for a Premier League debut. 16-year-old. I mean, what were you doing at 16, Scott? Were you playing in the Premier League? I don't think you were.
Getting in trouble for drinking. Mainly.
Yeah, well,
was what I was doing at age 16.
The statute of limitations is over on that, so
yeah, exactly.
You could say
exactly, that. Yeah. No, I'm a huge Mikey Moore fan. I should say this. I don't watch a ton of academy matches, right? But what I've followed, around him and regarding him since he was signed 3 years ago or whatever, is that he's a real talent. And when I have seen him play, he's very technical. So I think he has a bright future. I also think that making the jump from the U18s to the Premier League is going up like 50 leagues, probably, I would say, in a rough estimate, maybe more than that, right? In one fell swoop. So he looked completely lost and out of place and not quite sure where to be at any given time. But he got his first run in, and I'm thrilled for him. And I would imagine that he will, continue to train with the first team for quite some time and maybe even get some opportunities to play next year. We'll see.
Yeah, the word is that Spurs were planning on taking him on the postseason friendly trip to Australia next week. There's also word that he's going to go play with the under-18 England team this summer and probably be out on the tour as well. So I think they're going to get a really good look at him and kind of see what he can offer, and whether there's a loan move or whether he sticks around in the first team next year, I don't know. But boy, it's pretty cool for him to be able to make his debut, and maybe he even gets some minutes in the finale on Sunday, depending on how that match plays out. But was quite cool to see him come on, and didn't really look out of place either. Like, kind of looked the part for the brief spell that he was on the pitch. So nice to see that. After the match, we get Ange Postecoglou in the press conference, and for those who have been living under a rock, I suppose, the last 48 hours since all of this went down, this was uncomfortable. Like, it was awkward and uncomfortable. And then we saw that there was an incident with a fan during the match, a fan behind the dugout that Ange had to go at. I want to give us a second to kind of listen to Ange's comments, because I don't want them to be taken out of context. We're going to play them now, and we'll just kind of react to everything he says. So this is Ange Postecoglou basically being asked about kind of the mindset and just the result and everything that went down in the stadium on Tuesday night.
No, I think the last 48 hours has revealed to me the foundations are fairly fragile, mate. So that's what I feel. I just think that's, like I said, the last 40 hours has revealed a fair bit to me, and that's all right. That just means I've got to go back to the drawing board with some things. Not interested, mate. Don't care. Outside, inside, everywhere. It's been an interesting exercise. It's just my observations, mate. I'm not going to tell you, because it's for me. I'm the one that's got to do it. So, you can make your own fairly accurate assessment of what's happened. And I understand I probably misread the situation as to what I think is important in your endeavour to become a winning team, but that's okay. That's why I'm here. No, it's got nothing to do with summer plans. The summer plans are there. That's right. I'm just not interested, mate. And maybe, maybe I'm out of step, but I just don't care. I just want to win, and I want to be successful at this football club. That's why I was bought. So, what other people, how they want to feel and what their priorities are, of zero interest to me. I know it's important to build a winning team, and that's what I need to concentrate on.
So that's Ange after the match on Tuesday night, and obviously it's made its rounds, and there were fans in the stadium actively and openly rooting against Spurs, and there were plenty of Arsenal fans in attendance as well, obviously rooting for Spurs. It was one of the weirder atmospheres, and I could even get that just watching on television. It was one of the weirder atmospheres that I've seen a Spurs match played out. And I think that it bothered him. And I also think he has every right to have it bother him. I think that fans who are going to go and root against their team, especially when, as you mentioned earlier, there was technically still Champions League football on the line. If Spurs had won this match, they would have needed to get a result and get help on Sunday, but Champions League was still in the balance. And to openly root against your own team, I think is a little bit chicken shit, but that's just my opinion. Where do you stand on just, what's your overarching theory on this whole reaction and everything that went down on Tuesday?
Yeah, man, I hate everything I saw from the fans. It honestly frustrates me, and I'm very much right there with Ange Postecoglou. It's frustrating. I put out a tweet before the match that said nothing but 3 points. Champions League is on the line, and I had said, and I stand by this: if we want to stop Arsenal from winning the league, then let's win the league. Like, let's stop worrying about who gets points because of the results that we get, and who we give points to these people there and take them from there. Let's just go win the fucking league. And that's exactly what Ange Postecoglou is saying. He's like, I'm here to win. The dude is a stone cold killer. Like, the look in his eyes when he looked at that, when he looked directly into the camera and he was answering a question, like, he's ready to go to war over this. He's furious, right? And he should be. It comes out that members of his own staff, and not the coaching staff, right, but members of the internal staff at Tottenham Hotspur had made jokes to him about throwing the match. Sure, they're Spurs fans. I understand it. But that is absolutely unacceptable. And I think when Ange Postecoglou says, I got to go back to the drawing board, I think he's going to clear out a house of all these people who felt that way. I really do. And I think he should. It's a harsh thing to say, but he knows that until the very root of every single person in this door is fully committed to absolute victory over all else, that I'm not set up to win, right? So do I think for a second that any player was not interested in winning? Absolutely fuck no, not a chance. Like, to think that is absolutely asinine. I don't even care if they're a Spurs fan. I don't even care if they're Oliver Skip that comes through the academy. Football players want to win, and they want to play in Champions League over Europa League. No questions about it, right? They don't care if their rivals win the league. They want to play in the Champions League. Done deal. But if there's people at the club who work for the club and are active in the day-to-day of what eventually becomes the on-field product that are not there, then see you later. Like, and that's what Ange Postecoglou is saying, in my opinion. So we've got a lot of work to do. Do I think for a second he's disgruntled enough to rethink his decision? No. I mean, he said at the end of the press conference, that's why I'm here, right? Because of these problems. But to think that Ange Postecoglou would be interested in not taking all 3 points because of how it affects other team in the table, that is honestly, if you really think about it, that's the most laughable, just dismissive thing that I could ever think of, honestly. It just blows my mind.
And I think that speaks to part of the mentality that we as a football club, and I use the word we very intently there, because the football club not only encompasses the players, the manager, the coaches, the backroom staff, this staff that, as you mentioned, had been reportedly making jokes about throwing the game, or actually there was apparently a staff member, and this is all from The Athletic. There was a big piece written on The Athletic about this ordeal, but apparently a member of the support staff joked that Spurs should play a youth team against City, and that is what really set Ange off. The club denied that this happened, but I don't know why you would report something like that if it didn't happen. There's been a phrase, or I guess an analogy being thrown around over the last handful of days, that if you're too busy looking at your neighbor's garden, your flowers start to die. And that's, I think, kind of where all of this falls for me. What I can say is I can be completely accepting of a result. Look, I think you and I both would agree that this club, for where it is right now, are better off in the Europa League going to next season than they would be in the Champions League. That's not to say you don't still strive for the Champions League. To dare is to do is not just a line we say. Like, you strive for the bigger thing, but I think we can be accepting of, yeah, Europa League is probably better. And also, it would be better for our hearts and our feelings and our minds if Arsenal don't win the fucking league. Yes, we can agree with all of those things, but you don't openly root for it. It's almost like you just accept those things when they happen. And that's kind of where a lot of this, for me, really, like, that's where it really got kicked off. I think the atmosphere and a lot of this, I'm, bringing up from The Athletic, the fan thing that happened with Ange. The Athletic reported that a fan was actually asking Postecoglou why he had not shown the same animation earlier in the season rather than just in this match against City. That fan was apparently ejected from the stadium after this confrontation with Ange. If you're going to the match to ask Ange about his emotions during or to I won't even say ask, to berate Ange, to abuse him with, language, like, that's not fandom. That's insanity to me. That's really, really bad. Obviously, the results have not been good, and it's been a slog. But this guy has also faced, I think, the most amount of adversity you could face in the first year as a Premier League manager. I mean, number one, the day before the season starts, the best player in club history walks out the door. So you're confronted with that. You have injury crisis after injury crisis, red card crisis, multiple players leaving for international duty in the middle of the season. It's been a lot of adversity. And this club has scored more goals than it did last year, conceded fewer goals than it did last year, is going to have more points than it did last year, and a higher table finish than it did last year. It's been an improvement from what we had previously. I heard a lot of people comparing this moment that Ange had to a Mourinho or Conte moment, and I don't think it's that at all.
No.
I do, however, want to say I don't love that Ange picked this moment to go off like this. I accept that he did, and I respect that he did. But this is the kind of thing that also maybe it can't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it can't be done behind closed doors. Maybe he needed to say something like this to shake up the fan base. But what he's done by going off like this really just pissed off the fan base. But I also think that if we can take a look and I say we, the fan base, I'm quote unquote speaking for all of us. If we can look ourselves in the mirror for a second and realize that rooting against our own team just so that our main rival doesn't win something is not a winning mentality. And that's what we've been striving for so many years, is to gain a winning mentality. But then we're going to bemoan someone for calling us out on that. Like, what do we actually want as a fan base and as supporters? Do we want a winning mentality, and do we want to change things? Do we want to actually win something? Or do we want to just bitch and moan that we're not doing that? And then, but also we don't want our rivals to win something as well. You said it best. You don't want Arsenal to win the league because you want Spurs to win the league. Like, not because you want City to win the league. You want Spurs to win the league.
Exactly. 100%. And to think that the same fans who are, again, berating Ange Postecoglou for his mentality going into this match, and I'm seeing things on Twitter like, he just doesn't understand the rivalry, and I'm seeing things on Twitter like, it was one match, like, we don't need to make this a bigger deal than it is. But those same fans are the ones who, as you said, have been screaming for the club to become a winning club, right? And to turn around and be upset with a manager for wanting to do so just doesn't add up. Like you said, you can't have it both ways, and we need to decide as a fan base what we actually want. It honestly is incredibly frustrating.
I want to also have a go briefly at the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, because they issued a statement to The Athletic in this article, saying that they would be happy to set up a meeting with Postecoglou to explain the context around the rivalry with Arsenal and why feelings run so deep. I'm pulling that line directly from this article on The Athletic. Does the Supporters Trust believe that a man who once coached Celtic doesn't know what rivalries mean? Like, are we being serious right now? The chair Martin has some other quotes in here that I look. Yeah, and Ange mentioned that things outside the club are not pleasing him. Yeah, that does probably mean supporters. And it probably means if you're really rooting for Manchester City because you don't want Arsenal to win, that is, I would agree, that is probably an issue. You should be rooting for Spurs to improve and be better at all times. And there's another quote in here. Gosh, when I read it, I was baffled. He said, unless you've lived the life of a Spurs fan, you're in no position to comment. Ange Postecoglou is the manager, my guy. Like, he's the one representing this club. And I don't think that every word that Ange has said, publicly in the last almost year since he's been appointed has been spot on, but I'd say he's probably hitting about 90%. Like, he's been really, really good. And while not a lot of fans are enjoying this moment, and God, there's so many fans out there that are wondering if he's leave, by the way, guys, he's not going anywhere. Like, let's just put that completely out of our mind. But like, fans don't want to hear that they aren't pretty. Fans don't want to hear that they might be doing it wrong. Like, fans always just want to be told that their team's the best and they are the prettiest. They're the prettiest one at the dance and all that. And the second that they're not being told that, they're going to throw a hissy fit. And I feel like that's what's happening right now. I'm not throwing a hissy fit. I agree with Ange in most of what he said. I don't really love the way he went about it because it felt combative and it felt out of place. But obviously this is something that's been boiling and he just let it out in a press conference, which I don't think is the best practice all the time. But if he feels this is the best way to change things, I'm going to back him on that.
Completely agree with you. I'm perfectly fine with him expressing his emotions. He's been nothing but brutally honest anytime he's been in front of the microphone, so I wouldn't expect anything different. He was very frustrated, and the build-up to the match became his match experience in a massive game for Champions League qualifications. Like, so much is on the line for Ange Postecoglou, and his stadium is not behind him over a rivalry. I understand why he's fuming, and therefore I'm okay with the way that he expressed himself in the press conference. He's pissed. He has every right to be. And the deal with the supporters trust, I'll just say it. While Ange Postecoglou's situation is different than Conte and Mourinho's, in my opinion, what the supporters trust has done with this statement is in some ways justify and back up everything that all three of these managers have done in front of the press at this point. Everything Mourinho said about the lack of winning mentality, everything Conte said about the lack of a winning mentality, and now everything Ange Postecoglou has said about a lack of winning mentality. To come out and again put all that on paper and send it out into a public forum, you have shown that we are not a club with a winning mentality. Staff members have shown that we are not a club with a winning mentality. We have backed up everything that we've been so upset about for the last 5 years and the past couple of days. And I understand why he's so frustrated. I'm getting frustrated, as you can tell, just talking about it, right? It's an
emotional conversation. It is.
Honestly, it's infuriating to me. And look, I didn't grow up in North London, right? I've been a fan since 2010. I personally would never, ever, ever root against my team, no matter the circumstance. I just don't understand it. Maybe it's an American thing. Maybe I don't even want to try to touch it, right? But to go out and root against the team that I love so dearly is something that is just absolutely unfathomable to me. I don't care if Arsenal wins the league because we get 3 massive points in Champions League qualification implications, right? I just don't care.
This is where we'll differ only slightly, and I mean only slightly. And it's funny, like, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm an American who has been a fan for not my whole life, but it's and the American thing is interesting because there are some scenarios in American sports where you would actually root for your team to not win because you'd get a better draft pick. That's not the case here at all. And I do care. I would rather see City win the league than Arsenal, but not at the detriment of my own club helping that. Like, exactly. I don't like that is That's nothing to me. And I would rather Arsenal not win, but I'm not going to openly root for it. That's whatever's going to happen I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. And also I'm not going to have any impact on it regardless. So like whether I'm cheering for it or not. So it doesn't really matter. I'm rooting for the rot that is in this club to be tossed out. And here's also the big difference for me between Ange and Conte or Mourinho is, one, he's not digging out the players. He was really careful to not dig out the players specifically in this. He was, in fact, praising many of the players for their performances and their efforts, and has done that a lot. I can't remember a case where, maybe a little bit with like Madison at times, he's like earlier in the season through some of his struggles, he's made, but never gone in on anyone. He's never.
Well, and he knows Madison will respond in a positive way to that type of stuff, right? So he's a smart dude. No way he's ever dug out a player. And Tuesday, they were fantastic, and no reason to dig any of them out. And that tells me everything I need to know, that they all wanted 3 points, right? So,
he's also not simply, like, as you would say, throwing his toys out the pram. Like, he's not throwing a hissy fit that he's not getting his way. He knows that this is a long-term thing. And when I say long-term, I probably mean at least 3 years. And we're almost to the end of year one of it. And he doesn't have the Conte Mourinho mindset of, if I haven't won the Premier League within the first, 3 windows, then this is a problem. He doesn't have that mindset. He knows that this is a project, and I think he's game for it. And that's what, I think he's pissed. I think he realizes that this is probably a much harder job than even when he took it, almost a year ago. Yeah. But I think he's game for it. And I'm excited to see him take on the challenge and continue. I think he'll be back this summer, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you raise an excellent point, because Conte and Mourinho had issues with the players and the budget to bring in players. Ange Postecoglou has no issues with this squad. He is progressing just as well as he expected to and thinks he should be. His issue is with everything off the field, right? And I'm not even talking about fans right now. I'm pointing to members inside of the organization who said things they shouldn't have said this week. That means that the rot is inside the house, right? It's not just like your neighbors and the lawn staff, right? The fans, right? Is in quotes, but it is your family, the people that I said earlier, that their day-to-day affects the on-field product, right? And they were not all in. And that's where Ange is like, okay, separate the players. I have everything I need, but I have a broken foundation. And so, like, I can continue to build a playing staff in the manner that I need to, and I can continue to get the investment that I need from Daniel Levy on the field, but my foundation is cracked. And that's what I've learned. And I think that's why he's so heartbroken, right? When you're somebody who's a specialist in winning and building something like he is, and you have a broken foundation, it's got to be gutting, right? That is different than saying I don't have the 6 that I need, right? That can be accomplished in a transfer window. It's a whole different ball game, and I'm concerned, and I have every reason to understand why Ange is concerned. He's the fucking manager.
It's something we're going to continue to react to over the weeks and months as we barrel into a summer that I think is going to be really important for this club. And I've been saying that really since, probably since January ended, because I do think that this is a massive opportunity for this club to grow, and it's looking more and more like it'll be within a Europa League context. Of course, a match coming up on Sunday against Sheffield United. 1 point is required to clinch the Europa League spot and 5th place. I have every confidence that Spurs will go to Bramall Lane and get that point. I really do. I don't think it will be that much of an issue. I don't know what the team is going to look like. Maybe he throws Van de Ven back out at left back if his fitness is there and able to do that. I don't think there were any other massive injury hiccups from the week, but we'll see. I'm encouraged, but also a little bit worried at how fans are going to react to even hearing this conversation, because I don't think that this is the typical Spurs fan conversation that we're hearing this week. I think we're hearing a lot of angst and a lot of anger toward Ange. And I think that if we take a step back and just look at like I said, look at yourself in the mirror. Sometimes you got to do the work on yourself and think, am I wrong here? It's almost like therapy. Like, I know you and I are big therapy boys. Like you got to look internally sometimes and figure out, am I going about this in the right way? And
Yep.
I know that there's going to be a lot of listeners, especially our friends in England, who are going to be like, you don't know any better, you dumb American. Look, I'm just looking at this from afar and saying, this club has not won anything in a very, very long time. And maybe there are reasons other than the players just haven't gotten the job done. Maybe.
Yeah, you know what? I've said for years, every time we've dropped points in a big match or not shown up when it really mattered, do we maybe have a mentality issue at this club, right? And I've been maybe talking about the players more so, but it never dawned on me that it may be, again, off the field, but still very relevant to the on-field product, right? So maybe we're seeing some of that. But like I said, it's the last thing I'll say. We as a club have justified everything that our rivals say about us and everything that the media says about us with our actions this week as a fan base and as a supporters trust. And it's disappointing.
It is that. I agree with you. Like I said, a point on Sunday against Sheffield United will clinch Europa League football for next season and 5th place. A loss and a Chelsea victory over Bournemouth would give it to Chelsea, which is also just an insane prospect to think about when we think about where Chelsea has been this year. But we'll see it all play out on Sunday. Scott, before we get out of here, I don't want to short the conversation on Spurs women. They did suffer, speaking of Chelsea, defeat to Chelsea yesterday on Wednesday, 1-0 at home. This was a match that honestly was kind of all Chelsea. Like, there weren't a lot of chances for Spurs women going forward. It was, you're talking about days after a really deflating defeat in the FA Cup on Sunday at Wembley. And I think that this was a match that you always kind of thought was going to go this way. Although for it to only be a 1-0 scoreline, I think is a minor victory. You're talking about a Chelsea team that's going to have an opportunity on Saturday to win the WSL. They are currently in first on goal difference over Manchester City. They've bested City by 2 goals in the goal difference. They are both level on 52 points. So Chelsea and Man City going into the final day of the WSL season and locking horns and trying to lift the title. So for Spurs to only lose this match 1-0, and I hate to sound defeatist in saying that, I think is saying something.
Yes, I am proud of the team for the result, as silly as that sounds, right? First of all, like I said last week, the women's team shows so much heart on and off the field, tons of it. They ooze it, and I'm proud of them. But just like the men went toe-to-toe with one of the best 3 men's teams in the world in City, the women went toe-to-toe with one of the best 3 women's teams in the world in Chelsea, in my opinion. So there's parallels there, but they played as well as we could expect them to. Chelsea, I think they're going on their 5th straight Women's Super League title, potentially the 6th. I'd have to fact check that, but I believe it's their 5th straight Women's Super League if they win over the weekend. They have U.S. women's national team manager Emma Hayes at the helm, who is a fantastic manager. So to play them that closely is great. I'm really proud of them, and I think Robert bounced back well from what we know was maybe not the best team selection in the FA Cup final, right? I think he put out a really good team. I think Suminen and Spence have been great in a pivot. I think not having both Beth and Martha Thomas start was a really good move. I've been a big fan of Grace Clinton and Celine Bizet both, and they both got the start. And Jess Naz, of course, is the first name on the team she's written in. But I thought the lineup was good and gave us every chance to go out and potentially get a result. And I think we got as close as we could realistically have expected to. So hats off to the women, and they'll finish 6th, as we know, right? 6th is the spot for them, regardless of anything that happens. And we will be able to build on everything that's happened this year, but even, to keep it back to the moment, the Chelsea match yesterday will allow us to continue to build for sure. So I'm happy.
And I've got your fact check. It would be Chelsea's 5th straight title, but their 6th, or excuse me. Yeah, it would be their 6th in, no, I'm wrong again. It would be their 7th in 8 years.
Yeah.
Like they've been the dominant force. Robert had a lot of great things to say about the effort after the match. And you brought up Emma Hayes. She was also very, very effusive in her praise for the job that Robert Villaham has done with this club. It's just another exciting growth point. And it's something we've talked about all season. Like this club is growing rapidly, and going into next season, I'm very excited to see what they do. I'm very excited going into the summer to see what they do, but going into next season, it should be really fun. Spurs women do have one more match. It is Saturday. It is West Ham United, and it is being played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So an opportunity for fans to go out and see this team one last time in the big stadium before the season ends. So get out and see them if you can. If you are over there in England, that will be a great opportunity to kind of send them off after a great FA Cup run, which obviously ended heartbreakingly last Sunday, but a really good opportunity for this club to get one more against a crosstown rival, and that would be awesome. So exciting things happening on the women's side as well going into a summer. Like I said, Scott, we're going to be back with you guys next week to kind of wrap all of this stuff up. It's this has been a lively and fun chat. I'm glad that we were able to kind of make the schedules work, and I didn't want to go so long between pods without addressing everything that has happened over the last week, and I just feel like it's important. We're obviously going to hear from other members of the Depot. We'll hear from Caroline, from Todd, from Dakota at some point on all of this stuff. There's a lot that's going to be said in the next weeks and months about everything going on. It's awkward times, but I think we can all manage to like tiptoe our way through this and get to the other side.
And on that note too, I will definitely address the elephant in the room that some of what I said is probably not going to align with a lot of people out there, right? I understand that I may be one of the few, in my opinion, of how all this transpired, right? But if anyone out there disagrees with me, I'd love to chat. I mean, I'm a nice guy. I'm not coming at anybody, right? I'd be happy to hear, why people may feel differently. I'm certainly not going to turn an ear to any of that either, right? So we're all fans. We all love the club, no question about it. I'll tell you, anyone who doesn't agree with me, and would rather see us lose so Arsenal doesn't win, I don't think you love the club any less than I do, right? I just think we have different opinions, and I always appreciate people sharing why they might not agree with me. So if you're one of them, please let me know. I'm happy to chat, and appreciate everybody listening.
No doubt about it. That's going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Also, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. It really does help to spread the word about the show. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, all of them at Tottenham Depot. You can also reach out to us via email at tottenhamdepot@gmail.com. We'll talk to you guys next week. This has been a fun one. As always, come on, you Spurs.